another black person. They said I had a colonial mindset, and you know, basically called me racist.
In the cradle of the sun,
and it's like, you know, we offer opportunity after opportunity. It's not all some of my best employees.
The story begins,
but I just haven't had the same
that
experience.
no time.
And me personally, I've interviewed 1,000 people.
The black man was
and
first.
I've also hired every single race.
Oh yes, he was first.
There's no race I have time to.
From the sands of the Nile to the mountains tall, he carried the world, he fathered it all. The black man was first. Oh yes, man was first.
Pretend it's not real, but our real life.
Can't you see? He's the root of our family tree. Spreading love, spreading word.
And we don't
The black man was first. He sailed the seas long before they knew.
Palatable.
With stars as his map and the ocean.
Somebody responds with passion, that's their right.
To lands far away. Oh, the tales they rehearsed. The black man was first.
White woman, you're not triggered.
Oh yes, he was.
Someone gets triggered by something that's being presented to them.
Through deserts and jungles, through storms he would roam. Every step that he took laid the path to our home. The black man was first.
White people don't spend enough time around black people. In my opinion, gather the real life.
Oldest history, oldest soul, heart of the earth, he made it whole. Every beat of the drum, every song that we sing, is the echo of him, the original king.
And I think that sometimes, maybe people like yourself, maybe people.
Peace to the saints. If you'd be kind enough to confirm that you can hear me by posting an Alpha 1 in the chat that you're hearing through this microphone. I wanted to react to a debate that's actually unfolding right now because there's some critical perspective that needs to be added. And so what I'm going to do is share my screen. If you confirm that you can hear once I start doing that. And also, as we go through, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to use the information below to support the work. You can provide tithes, tuition, or if you would like to come on and have a discussion, if for some reason you're convinced that Black fatigue is a major issue, happy to have that discussion with you. Just send $1 so we can get your email. I don't want to drop the link in the chat in general because there are a lot of weirdos who tend to click it, not the serious persons. Anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at what's unfolding right now. So this is a conversation. I think the panel is a touch too large for my taste, in as much as you don't get to hear people out.
Life. I can tell you, being a brother, most brothers are not violent. Most brothers can't even fight. Most men can't.
Okay, curious. Are you guys able to hear the bald gentleman speaking? You guys can confirm that. So they're in the middle of the conversation right now. It's actually currently going on, and we're not catching it from the beginning, but rather we're catching it in real time, which I think is fine. I like to deal with what is current. So far, I've actually been shocked. I've not listened to much of Just Pearly Things content, but I thought she was a bit more clever. But increasingly, I'm seeing that the quality of humankind and, white people is declining. Not as smart as I was told, but all the same, we're going to make an analysis of this. Before we get going, may I acknowledge, shout out to Emmanuel. He writes, tuition, peace of the saints, came in via Venmo. Shout out to Travis. He sent an email. came in by Venmo supporting. He writes, I know it's a bit off topic, but I wanted to mention this. My mother used to sell a lot of marijuana and meth back in the day, and we never were on SNAP benefits, but she sure did buy a lot of SNAP benefits from junkies for 50 cents on the dollar. Oh, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons that I don't like to pay into government systems, because they're often fraudulent. It's not only the SNAP benefits, it's the inordinate amount of money that's sent abroad. In addition, it's the money that's paid out to our veterans who are injured, but they're not really injured. I know at least 10 veterans that are injured, but none of them are actually injured. And that's fine. You know, shout out to them. Work the system, but don't work it against me. You heard me? And I also acknowledge via PayPal. Shout out to Michael, writes, for the pith. I appreciate you. Shout out to the real one supporting the work. Let's go ahead and take a listen. And this will go as long as you guys like. If you're enjoying it, as indicated by supporting the work, then we'll carry it on. Yeah, I'm good. Or it's casual, then we'll cut it down.
They don't even, own the copyright of martial arts being something that is a discipline, but also is tied to knowing how to strike and knowing how to defend oneself. So for you to make blatant statements, I think is very disingenuous. I would like to have a conversation where we can hopefully grow and learn some stuff, but the attacks are not necessary, in my opinion. And I land.
Okay, so can I respond? Cool. All right. So again, Black people do have the right to be passionate when they talk, but we also have the right to be fatigued. So it can be very fatiguing.
The first thing that I should clarify that's really important, whether you're talking about the term woke or the term fatigue, these are both terms that originated among the Blacks. Who knows if they actually thought of it themselves, or if the liberal white woman, the LGBTQ mafia, implanted this. We don't know. It's hard to say nowadays. However, both terms were hijacked, and all of a sudden being woke became a bad thing. When it was owned by Black people, at least the Black people in the media, it meant that you were awake, you were aware, you knew what time it is, you know what's going on in this world. But then when it was hijacked, it meant that you are one who exaggerates what's going on. You're one who is perhaps not quite honest about things, your own history, your own current experience. You're too woke, in other words, you're a loon. And then the term Black fatigue, when it was controlled theoretically by the Blacks, but certainly by the Black people in the media, it meant that Black people were exhausted from what they had to deal with. And there's no doubt Black folks have been dealing with quite a bit for some time. And then when it was taken over by the white conservative racist movement, then it became an expression of discontent against the Blacks, which probably yet another form of anti-Black racism, which has never died. It's been a constant stream in American history. Now, the problem when you have these conversations, such as is going on this panel, is that you have dishonesty on both sides. Now, there's no doubt that that's pretty much always going to be the case. But, there are levels. There's levels of reason. And you really either have to have people who are willing to be honest, or people who are bright enough and skilled enough tactically to press the other person down and force them to be honest or to make concessions. Otherwise, neither side makes concessions, and there's no real dialogue. There's no true back and forth. Rather, this person is talking their rehearsed remarks, or the remarks they've heard over and over again on YouTube, and they're just repeating it, having done no research. And no one's actually engaging the other person's arguments. And that's mostly what's happening here. There's no doubt that a great many of the folks on screen are very liberal, and I would probably describe as white liberal women, frankly. And as a result, you probably don't need to duplicate the same perspective so many times. I think Cooley probably represents a unique perspective on that panel, and I would have to concede that I'm not familiar with anyone else. There's one young lady on there who seemed to get cooking for a moment. I think her name is Pretty Intellectual. She seemed to be cooking for a moment, but we can only trust a Black woman minimally when she has blonde hair. You see, especially when she's arguing against white supremacy while wearing a white woman's hair. And for the multitude of fools who would say something like, oh, Mark, Black people have blonde hair. It's like, no. Actually, you sound like a fool. I've lived a great deal of years on this earth and traveled many places. And no, Black people really don't have blonde hair. You may find some aberrations among the indigenous populations in Australia, known as the Aborigines. But aside from that, even there, it's not common. So aside from that, it's quite rare. So the psychology of the Black person, you're mixing in many cases, unfortunately, a high level of inferiority with a pretty modest IQ. Then they come up with these kind of obsessions with marginal things. Yes, even this kind of thing right here, referencing Melanesia. What percentage of Black people have blonde hair? This is just sheer stupidity. Not even a significant percentage of white people have blonde hair. So it just shows how much of a white supremacist most Black people are. And this is precisely why a strong leader is required, because you can't heal stupidity. You can't heal low IQ. You can't talk someone into logic when they refuse because they're emotionally attached to certain ideas. I just imagine being a Negro, but you love that which is white so much, you have to argue, oh, we're blonde too. Now, yes, I get it. Black people were blonde first, but this is chiefly a racial trait that is associated with white Europeans. And the problem is that Black people can scarcely put forward a linear argument in support of themselves because they hate themselves mostly. Yes. And so that's why I think it's worthwhile for me to break this down, not in as much as I'm in the middle, but in as much as I actually understand from both sides. I think there are people who may be in the middle, or they're trying to be in the middle, but they just don't understand on both sides of the situation. Anyway, shout out to Ernest supporting the work. Came in using the Stripe link. I appreciate you. May I also acknowledge via Venmo. Shout out to Jabrizi. He writes, the Saints will get a kick out of this story, I bet. I tried to smash Pearly Things when she came to use the podcast equipment. I thought she curved me, but now I see she was just Black fatigued. You know, Jabri, the funny thing is I was looking at just Pearly Things. I trust that she's both lost weight and gotten herself a little bit of fixer-upper in terms of enhancement surgeries. And she's actually looking decent. You know, she's looking like, might be something worth, knocking down. Shout out to Issachar supporting the work via Venmo. Appreciate you. Writes, Peace of the Saints. May I also acknowledge Fambo writes, tuition from Leon. Thank you, sir. And shout out to the people who support the work and this good information and analysis. I also acknowledge Charlie writes, tuition. Shout out to Eric as well. He writes, got a 5-figure bonus at work. That's a heck of a bonus. Only right to share with Assassin. Absolutely. Congratulations. May we all congratulate Eric. It's a beautiful thing to see people thriving, especially during this time. This is a great time to thrive. Shout out to Dominic. He writes, Peace of the Saints, tuition, appreciate you. And Dominic is very much so dedicated, always putting in work for the Assassin. A lot of folks are like, hey, how do I get confirmed? Put in work. Exemplify our values and our culture. That is how you get confirmed. Now let's get after it.
When, it's a little bit rude, just my opinion. You can take it or leave it. Black people do commit more crimes. I think it's very obvious with the crime rate.
Now, this is an important thing to state accurately. You see, you'll have both sides thinking that they're right and they both sound stupid at the same time. They're both at some level right and they're both at some level wrong. And this is the problem when you have people who are half-wits speaking on the internet, be them white or Black. For example, if a white person says Black people commit more crimes, okay, not quite accurate. I think what she really means is there's a preponderance of criminality in the Black population. As a population, they are disproportionately represented in the legal system, perhaps. Prosecution, convictions, right? But if you perhaps look at total number of crimes committed, then maybe it's white people or some other demographic. So the fact of the matter is that people are not stating this accurately. And in very few cases do you hear them say, this is my statistic. I got this statistic by a study done by the doctor so-and-so in this particular journal. And that's because they're basically Google and internet scholars. So they're not reliable persons, and they're referring to sources that are even less reliable. Basically, trust me, bro. Now, the challenge when you address the fact that there is significant criminality in the Black population, you have sensitive folks who will, oh, no, that's not true, or look at this, or look at that. They want to distract, they want to dodge it instead of dealing with it head on and honestly. And I don't say deal with it honestly to be a good debate partner to a just pearly things, but rather for the purpose of dealing with the problem. It is, in fact, a problem, particularly because Black people, like any other people, live amongst themselves. And if the crime rate is high, then it'll mostly be Black people suffering from that. And for that reason, it has to be dealt with. So we can acknowledge it. Yes, there's some truth there. Let's deal with it. That's number one. Then number two, the fact is, the data indicates this, is that there is no doubt that the legal system is extraordinarily biased. And policing is extraordinarily biased. The data is there. There's a book that I referenced by one Dr. Renford Reese. I read it cover to cover. I know Dr. Renford Reese. And you can find it if you actually like data and information. You can find it if you go to amazon.com/shop/The Saint and the Sinner. And I have a number of books there that are chock full of information, not only meaningful statistics, but actual history and logic to help you through. But one thing I want to note for you guys is beyond the statistics, so that you can understand if maybe you're not a Black person, you're watching this. I've always been a straight edge person for the most part with regards to intoxicants and just petty things and silly crimes. So I've never once drank alcohol, never used marijuana. And more importantly, I never wanted to be around people doing those things because I don't like how they behave. And more importantly, I don't want to be implicated in a crime. You see, I don't want them to be committing a crime and then I'm too close to the crime. And as a result, I would be arrested and have to suffer. I remember when I was in university, I founded a fraternity, as you all may know. And because Berkeley has less than 1% Black male population, the fraternity was overwhelmingly upper class white male, and then a couple others, you know, some Indians, some Asians, some ethnic Chinese. And I remember one time we were walking down Frats Row and the white guys are smoking marijuana. I'm paranoid as hell because Berkeley is a very safe campus. And part of the reason it's safe is because there's a lot of police and security, you know, patrolling the perimeters. And especially on a weekend night, you're going to have them making sure that Frats Row is safe. These boys are just smoking the ganja just right out in the open. I don't think it was legal at this time. And they were also drinking alcohol, just walking down the street. And I'm just paranoid, me and a bunch of white guys. Now, there's no doubt that I had the protection of being a University of California, Berkeley student and being in the midst of a bunch of upper class white guys. And so anyways, the police came upon us and said, guys, come on. You can't be doing this out like this. You know better than that. Where are you going right now? They're like, oh, yeah, we're just going to this party. He was like, hurry up. Put that out. Put that out. Give me those. Hurry up. And I was there stunned. Now, mind you, I'm the only person not breaking the law. And I'm just there stunned like, did you guys just get a warning? Did y'all get a warning? Y'all were breaking the law blatantly. You got a warning? I didn't even know you could get a warning for that. I've never seen that. I didn't even know that was a real thing. They got a warning. And you could tell that it was expected. And it didn't feel like anything for them. They didn't feel like, oh, I just got off. They didn't feel like, oh, I just got a freebie. I definitely felt like I got a freebie. I wasn't even breaking the law. That is what Black people call white privilege. Now, I don't use the term white privilege because what it really is just being treated like a human being on a consistent basis. It's not white privilege. It's just being treated like a human being on a consistent basis. And because whites are the dominant persons in the society, then they're going to be treated well by one another because at a level, they're part of the same community. So that makes perfect sense. So what Black people call white privilege is just white people treating one another with decency and with favor, and not treating you, the Black, with the same level of decency and favor. So comparatively, you might feel like it's privilege, but no, it's not privilege. This is how people treat one another when they're in a community. And I'll never forget that. And I saw a couple other examples of such when I was in university. And I was kind of like, I was like, damn, I wonder if I could do that. I had an eerie feeling that I can't. unless I was just like in that cocoon of like whites and Asians. Maybe if I was by myself, it wouldn't have went well if I was doing the same things, probably, but I wouldn't test it. And the problem with some of the data is good data. I mean, I truly believe that if you have a bunch of arrests of black guys for smoking marijuana, I believe they were smoking marijuana. What I also believe is that probably the same number of white guys were smoking marijuana and just didn't get arrested for it. They didn't get booked. They didn't get questioned. They got told to, hey, knock it off. There was a higher level of understanding at the point of arrest, or here's a better one, at the point of encounter with the police officer. And that's the data that never gets recorded. I'll give you guys two more interesting examples. And to me, this is just the middle ground of the conversation of race, crime, and black fatigue, white exhaustion. The middle ground is this. I've had so many encounters with the police, so many, and so few of them have led to an arrest because most of them were basically harassment. And when the police are just harassing you, there's no documentation, there's no paperwork. And that's the part that is not populated into the data. Also, we know that black communities are over policed, and in many cases it also has something to do with the income level. Black people in America are much lower income than white people. So there are so many logical explanations that neither side is willing to address. And what's worse than these pundits we see talking about these things online is our political class. Certainly, if everyday people aren't even willing to give any ground on either side and their conversations don't matter, you find the left and the right, the Democrat, Republican, their conversations matter. Certainly, they're not going to give any ground because these things lead to policy. And I'll be honest with you. If I were a white man in an upper class neighborhood, what would I care about black people? I'm not black. I'm not poor. Like, it just wouldn't make any sense for me to really care. The suggestion that people are altruistic is very rare, in fact. And there's no doubt that I wouldn't say that the white American would be, the best candidate for being named an altruist. In fact, I believe that unfortunately, the white majority in America often consents to unjustified murder. Right now, we're observing those accused of being narco traficantes in the seas outside of Venezuela. They're being murdered without trial. We claim that to be civilized is to have courts of law and to have trials, yet we're not giving them trials. We didn't give Osama bin Laden a trial. We didn't give Muammar Gaddafi a trial. We didn't give these people a chance to defend themselves in the courts of law. And so what this only reminds us is that for the most part, the white collective, if you're not them, you're not going to get a chance. You're not going to get to experience human understanding, civilization, or any of those things. And this is an important thing to note, is that the laws don't apply to them the same way they apply to those who have more melanin. And that's a part of the conversation that so often white folks are not going to concede that part. But often black folks are not articulate enough to identify that, both to acknowledge the reality of the data, but also to identify the parts of the data that are missing. And to be able to do that, you have to be pretty good with logic. And frankly, black people are not very well trained in logic. Shout out to Danielle supporting the work. Use the Stripe link. I appreciate you. May also acknowledge Terrence as well supporting. Shout out to those who support good work and meaningful commentary. Looks like Jabrizi came back. He writes, Pearl ages like a white woman for sure. She had wrinkles on her face, and I think she was only in her yeah, that was crazy. To be honest, I was just trying to give her black fatigue for the team. Sometimes it'd be like that. You just got to stamp a flag for the people, expand the nation. Shout out to Seven. He writes, good evening, sir. How does it feel to be the greatest speaker alive? Also, have you been managing yourself well as of late? I have been managing myself very well, been very productive. In fact, after a recent live that I did, there were some persons in the live chat that were saying things that were inaccurate. The live session I did discussing artificial intelligence, which of course is something that's in vogue right now, but it's very important for a variety of reasons, especially for those of you who would like to be wealthy. I do believe that the 3 wealthiest Americans have enough wealth to represent the bottom 50% of the American households. That's insanity. Huge wealth inequality. And I think inequality is fine. I think it's natural, but there's a certain level at which it becomes grotesque. And if you don't figure out artificial intelligence, you will be victim of it at a higher level. So I may do a course on web development with AI. If you guys think that's of interest, let me know. And in fact, similar to how I did my how to create and monetize your own app, I did that as a practicum, basically live synchronous sessions like this. And we went through basically as a live class as opposed to a pre-recorded course. So I'm thinking about doing that. It just seems like it's such a necessity. Also, I've been working on a technology and I'm almost finished with it. I'm quite impressed with it. And I've been enjoying getting back into the tech space. So I say that to say I'm doing fantastically well. And in terms of being the best speaker alive, you only really get kudos for it when your voice is heard by the masses. And we know that there's a great effort to suppress, but we shall overcome. There's no doubt I have 1,000 tricks up my sleeve. And thank you for the acknowledgement. And for those of you who'd like to learn how to become a much better speaker, I have a course called the Master Communicator course. It was created by the master. You can get that at school.com/Marquette. Just click courses. Reginald writes, good to see you, sir. Congratulations to the saint who received the bonus in his workspace. Peace of saints. That's a beautiful thing. Very kind. Yes, indeed. And let us congratulate him again. That's what we want for our people. Great success. When I say our people, I'm not referring to the black people only. I'm referring to the good people, whatever color, creed, religion they may come with. Shout out to Mr. Thompson. He writes, why do you say to avoid pork? Well, it's not just me. There are a lot of scientists. And there are two ways to look at things. There's lived experience and that which is tactile and easy to observe. And then there's the data and the information. And there's no doubt that the pig is a foul beast that will eat nearly anything. If you were to lay down in a pen with hogs and stop moving, they'd consider taking you out, and they pretty much eat everything. The bone, the muscle, the flesh. They're really beasts that will, make a meal of anything you put in front of them. They don't have sweat glands and they don't expel their toxins in the same way that many other animals do. And frankly, I just don't find that pork is very alluring. The stench of it turns my stomach. But I'm not here to police anyone's diet. If you don't like pork, or if you like pork, have at it. If you love some chitlins, go ahead, my friend. But thank you for asking. Carrying on.
The fact that you're kind of uneasy generally when you're in a black area, you're much more likely to have someone commit a crime. And a third of black.
Now, this kind of discussion right here, now we have to acknowledge that Pearl is not a serious person. First, we have to acknowledge that before we have the conversation. And what I mean by that is that she doesn't really believe anything she's saying. She'll say whatever's in currency. If you were to check back on Pearl 3 years earlier, was she talking about black people? Absolutely not. Yes. And if you check back on most of the content creators 3 years ago, were they discussing black people? Absolutely not. Certain things come in waves. It's in vogue. It's popular. And so people hop on it. They hop on the bandwagon for the profit. So she's not a serious person. But regardless, one would really have to ask themselves why the major interest in black people. And I know that they're lying, especially Pearl, when she's talking about her personal experience with black people. I know she's lying because I'm black. I grew up in a black neighborhood. My whole family's black. And I rarely am around black people. The only times I'm really around black people, to be honest with you, is when I organize to be around black people, when I take out the effort to be around black people by inviting them somewhere. And the reason for that is income level. Perhaps since age 24, since like age 25, income has removed me from being in the midst of black people. So there's no doubt that someone as lily white as just Pearly things, certainly who's come from great privilege, she's not around black people. This is nonsense. And furthermore, it's quite a slap in the face, or perhaps just a result of her own ignorance, that she keeps on using this term black people. Would it be fair to say black people if maybe you're dealing exclusively with Nigerians, or you're dealing with a lot of Haitians? And this is not to throw either of the aforementioned under the bus, but the question is there any difference? Is there any nuance? I think that there probably is. But more importantly, I just don't believe her narrative. I don't believe she's hired a bunch of black people and they've stolen and lied to her. And I'd be curious to know, have white folks done this to you? And does that constitute white exhaustion when they do that? Or does that just mean you dealt with someone who's a crook? For example, in my case, I'd say in the last 10 years, exclusively white males have stolen from me, exclusively. And I'm not talking about a little bit. I'm talking about a lot of money they've stolen. And I'll tell you one funny story real quick. Some of you may have heard it. And this is how we know the courts are, extraordinarily corrupt and unpredictable. I had an antique Rolls Royce in mint condition. I took it in to have the brakes modernized by the foremost expert this side of the Mississippi in Las Vegas. And he kept my car for nearly 1 year, which on the face of it, that's outrageous. And then when I got the car back, I took it across the street to get gasoline. And then I proceeded to drive back to my property. And, within a block of the gas station, it starts smoking. Now, remember what I took it there to have the brakes modernized. It starts smoking. Why was it smoking? Because the brakes were engaged. There's two systems in a Rolls Royce, and one of the systems was engaged, and it was holding the tires, and that's why it was smoking. So I take it right back, and the guy who had collected my money had left. Then I ended up having to sue these folks. I thought it'd be an open shut case. They had your car for a year, gave it back to you in worse condition. It wasn't fixed, and the brakes were engaged when they weren't supposed to be engaged. You know what? White female judge. And mind you, someone who fixes Bentleys and Rolls Royce exclusively, they probably have some friends in high places. They had one witness during the case. I didn't even hire a lawyer because I thought it was such a simple, straightforward case of scamming. I go in there and they have one witness. The witness is the mechanic who was working on it. And he says, I did great work. And I said, well, if you're so good at it, why did it take a year? He says, oh, because I had to get an eye surgery, which I thought, curious. I don't know if that's true. Do we have any evidence on that? And he says, well, I did everything correctly. And then I said to the judge, I said, I've submitted witness statements from experts on the Rolls Royce motor car. And there are two things that stand out. Number one, this guy is not an expert on the Rolls Royce because he didn't even use the right oil. You're supposed to use this kind of oil. He actually used this kind of oil. And the kind of oil he used destroys the rubber in the Rolls Royce. You're supposed to use this kind because of X, Y, and Z. And it's on a statement from a Rolls Royce expert. Furthermore, I took it in to repair the brakes. I drove it on the freeway to the place. When I left, the problem started within one block, and it was a problem with the brakes. Mind you, when I took it in, I didn't have any problems with the brakes. I took it in to modernize the brakes, meaning put 20, whatever the year was that year, 2021 year brakes on that car, which was an antique. It had fine brakes. They were not engaging at the wrong time. Judge, oh, well, they have an expert witness, and he knows about this stuff, and he says that the work was done correctly. And I said, madam, he's the one who did the work. Of course he said it's correct. Kid you not, lost the case. It's like, what? I was like, this doesn't make any sense. So I say that to say that the courts can be unpredictable, and increasingly we will have unpredictable courts. Now, in that case, who knows? Was it because all of the people that I was suing were white and the judge was white? I don't know. Is it because maybe they have some connection to the judge? Maybe. Is it maybe their lawyer had a connection to the judge? Maybe. I don't know. But what I'm certain of is that was fundamentally wrong. There's just no doubt about that. So those are the kind of things that we have to deal with. Now, the unfortunate part is that I don't know if it was because I was black. I don't know if it was because they had connections with the judge. We'll never know. And those are those things where you might say it's racism. Maybe it's not racism. Who knows? But we know that the legal system can be a bit shisty. That's for sure. Anyways, carrying on.
Black men have felonies. So, I mean, I don't even know why we're arguing that point. Like, it's very obvious that black people commit more violent crime. Like, I'm not going to gaslight you about the.
Now, the important thing, and this is why I would have been privileged to be on this particular panel. And I would have only wanted to be on to engage Just Pearly Things because she's actually been running from me for years. One of my team members years ago reached out to her, young lady who worked for me. Many of you guys are familiar with her. She reached out to Just Pearly Things several years ago. Just Pearly Things agreed and then changed their mind. Then we had another gentleman who worked for me, young black man. He reached out to her and then she agreed but never followed up. And so we'd been trying to get her for a while because I've been wanting to catch that body. And I know for a fact that if I was on this panel and whoever organizes the panel would have told her that I was going to be on it, she would have no-showed. She would have no-showed. She would have made up an excuse as to why she can't be there. Anyway, shout out to the ballers. Teddy writes, Peace of the Saints. Glad to hear you are good. Are you still doing consultations? Yes, sir, I am. I usually don't promote it because I've been working so hard and I value my time. But yeah, I am. I'll drop the link in the live chat if you need to book one or someone else needs to book one. And probably sooner than later, in as much as I got Saints weekend on the 13th and 14th. So that I'm going to be completely busy. And then the second piece is that I have a trip, an international business trip, which frankly, I don't want to go to Europe because it's cold, but I have a serious business item to take care of. Gentleman writes, Marquette, I can get you on this panel now. Well, if just Pearly Things is on there, let's get it. Let's get it. Shoot me the info. I'm down. Oh, and by the way, Cooley, I was rooting for you, bro. I was in there in the chat like, bro, let Cooley talk, man. They got you in there late, man. I wanted to see you cook. Yeah, exactly. That's 100% the case. And this is very common. In fact, anytime I debate someone, even if it's well received and highly watched, I always ask, like, hey, do you want to do it again? They never agree. There's the two white supremacists who go by the name Frojack. When I had first reached out to one of them, he says, oh, can I bring my brother? They wanted the 2-on-1. I said, this is not a debate. I just want to interview you. I want to understand your ideology. And so he felt the need to bring his brother because he felt like it'd be a debate. And so he brought his brother. Then it was basically a 2-on-1 and they still got bodied. Then I had the debate with my son, who was, talking crazy. And it's so funny how intellectual people feel when they're in a comment section. As soon as they get on a one-on-one discussion, then all of a sudden that falls away. He got obliterated. And then I reached out to him. I said, hey, the people seem to have enjoyed it, and maybe you want to represent yourself better. Would you like to do a round 2? Bro did not respond at all. Now, mind you, we've been going back and forth on DM. He didn't respond at all. Now, here's the kicker. He's been on the thread of my Instagram replying to every person who makes a comment about the reel, which is the kind of thing you got to think twice about. Like, damn, bro, like you talking with like literally random people, thousands of them, but you won't reply to my DM. You got bodied bad, like super bad, like super, super duper insanely badly. But it gets like that. I always give the metaphor of boxing. It looks manageable from the outside. As soon as you get in the ring, ding, ding. Oh, it's so difficult. Shout out to 7. He writes, how are you liking? he says, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling that it's more intuitive and a better design tool. Yeah. Are you impressed by? As far as artificial intelligence, I don't want to promote any particular models. There's no doubt, though, that some of the models are much better at research or giving concise answers, and then other ones are better at creating images or videos and showing the actual likeness of the subject. So they have different strengths, these models. And frankly, the initial struggle of AI was to provide something that had utility as opposed to making funny GIFs and like all these kinds of things. And I think AI has definitely achieved that, and it's achieved way more than I would have expected and way faster. And I don't think it was necessarily that AI is advanced so fast. I think that it was released to us. Like the AI was developed, but it was allowed to be made available commercially to everyday people, in tranches. So it felt sudden and it felt like it's just advancing quickly. I actually think that it's been, strategically released based on government allowing it to be released at certain levels. And that's why it feels like it's advanced so quickly. But I surmise government has AI that's twice as sophisticated and has been using it for more than a decade. And that's probably why the United States may have military supremacy over China, is because, you just can't match those kind of numbers, right? The Chinese have over 1 billion people. We have like 360 million. Only AI could have helped, work against those kind of odds. Anyways, ladies and saints, let me acknowledge some of the folks supporting the work. Shout out to Ramon, right? Supporting the work. Peace of the Saints. Absolutely. May I also acknowledge Joshua with the baller alert came in via Venmo. Good to see you again. And shout out to the hustlers. Joshua and I might mess around and do a course on real estate. He's the real estate expert. I'm really just bringing him to your attention. And if not, I definitely need to see Joshua come out with a book. Like, that is mando. You dig? That is 100% mandatory. Anyways, Cooley sent me a message with the link to join on stream. So let me see if I can hop on there, folks. If you would be, so I thank you all for having been here with me. If you'd be kind enough to take a look at me on this Lapeef network, I'm going to see if I'm able to join in there. See you soon. Peace of the Saints.